Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're exploring the world of trading psychology with a book that really caught my eye, Trading Psychology 2.0. It's interesting because, it kind of moves beyond that whole emotions are the enemy thing.
Yeah. The author really digs into how being adaptable and using your strengths can help you find more consistent success when you're trading.
Okay, so like one of the big things the book talks about is focusing on best processes instead of clinging to those best practices.
Think about it like if you're running a restaurant, you've got your classic best practices,
Mm.
good food, good service, a nice atmosphere. But the restaurants that really stand out, they're the ones who can adapt.
Yeah.
They create those best processes.
Okay, I'm starting to see it. It's like that restaurant that was the first in their area to do like online ordering and curbside pickup. They
Yeah.
adapted, right? They saw how things were changing.
Yeah, exactly. And, the author uses this really cool example of a restaurant owner. He was really struggling and had to adapt big time, or he was going to have to close his doors. So what did he do? He brought in electronic ordering, but then he also started letting customers choose the music, like crowdsourcing the playlist. He totally changed the whole dining experience to stay relevant.
That's pretty wild. So basically, what's working in one situation might not work in another, and you need to adapt. I'm thinking like clinging to those old best practices, it's kind of like being stubborn and holding on to a losing trade, right?
Absolutely. And this kind of leads into something the book talks about called functional fixedness. It uses something called Dunker's candle problem to illustrate it.
Oh, I've heard of that puzzle. But remind me how it goes.
Well, basically, they give you a candle, some matches, and then a box of tacks.
Hmm.
You got to figure out how to attach the candle to a wall.
Okay. So where's the catch?
So most people, they get stuck thinking the box can only hold the tacks. They don't see it as like a potential platform to put the candle on.
Ah, I see. So they are focused on one way to use it and miss that creative solution.
Exactly. And in the world of trading, this functional fixedness, it can really hold you back. The author actually shares a story about this really successful stock picker. The guy was great at finding stocks, but he just refused to even think about market timing. He was so stuck in his ways.
That's so interesting. It really makes you think if we're all kind of falling into this functional fixedness trap somewhere in our lives, maybe without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
This whole thing ties into how our brains work. We use both fast and slow thinking.
Okay, so break it down for me. What exactly is fast and slow thinking, and how does it play into trading?
So picture this two systems kind of working at the same time. You've got system one, which is like your intuition. It's fast, it's emotional, it's great for split-second decisions, but that can get you into trouble with trading. Then there's system two, which is more deliberate and analytical. It's your slow, careful thinking.
So, like, if I slam on the brakes to avoid an accident, that's system one, right? But if I'm like planning out my trades for the week, that's more system two.
Exactly.
Mm.
And the book talks about this really successful macro trader. He was doing great, but then he tried using his deep analytical skills on shorter-term trades, and he just couldn't make it work. He was using the wrong mental system for the job.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now it makes me think about all the times I probably used the wrong thinking system in my own work. And it makes me wonder, are there certain times you actually want to be using that more intuitive system, in
Oh,
trading?
oh, it's definitely something to consider. And another big takeaway from the book is about what truly motivates you to succeed. They call it your emotional drivers.
Yeah, I remember the author shares a personal story in there about struggling with like exercise procrastination.
Yeah. He finally realized he wasn't just exercising for his own health, right? It was more about caring for his rescue cats. By tying his workout routine to their well-being, he was able to stick with it.
That's such a cool story. It really shows you how powerful it can be to connect your actions with something bigger than yourself.
It's all about tapping into your core values. What about you? What really drives you?
You really got me thinking there. And it kind of leads into this idea of breaking free from isolation, which the book also talks about. Especially for me, working from home, it can get lonely sometimes.
Isolation is tough, especially with trading, which can be a pretty solitary profession.
Yeah.
The book compares it to, like, a depressed person trapped in negative self-talk.
Hmm.
Isolation just makes those thoughts even stronger.
So, how do you break free from that?
Well, the book talks about surrounding yourself with positive people, creating those positive mirrors that reflect back your strengths. And then there's this idea of celebrating vicarious wins, like getting inspired by the successes of others.
I can definitely see how that would be more motivating than just relying on fear, like that pressure of hitting bottom.
Exactly. Fear-based motivation, it can be pretty destructive, especially in trading. So it's really important to ask yourself, are the people you surround yourself with lifting you up and encouraging you to grow? It really is all about who you surround yourself with. Another fascinating thing the book talks about is this see-feel-change cycle and how important a sense of urgency is when you're trying to make a change.
Okay, what exactly is that, the see-feel change cycle?
So it's like first you see something new, right?
Yeah.
Something that sparks your interest. Then comes the feel part. You get excited about it. You feel like, man, I really need to make this change. And then that feeling pushes you into
It's
action.
just like that aha moment that gets you moving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The author talks about how U.S. rates traders had to adapt when their usual market opportunities dried up. That urgency, it kind of forced them to change, even though they'd been stuck for a while.
So sometimes that outside pressure is what it takes to get you going.
Absolutely. And the author even talks about how he used this see-feel change cycle himself to break out of a trading slump. He saw a new concept, got excited about it, and then actually took the steps to try it out.
That's pretty inspiring, honestly. I get that sometimes too. Like when I get a new idea for a project, I just have to jump right in. What about this idea of small wins? The book talks about that leading to big changes, right?
Yeah, that's another great concept from the book. They use this story about a rescue cat named Naomi.
Aw, poor Naomi.
She was totally terrified of people at first,
Hmm.
but they were able to help her overcome her fear, through little positive interactions,
Right.
like just getting her to take food from them.
That's so sweet. It just shows you the power of those small steps.
Absolutely. And they relate it back to trading, like those little wins. Say you discover a new indicator that seems promising, something like that can really get you motivated.
It's like when you have that small breakthrough, it gives you the confidence to keep going, keep experimenting, and finding that edge.
Exactly. They talk about this idea of engineering hope through those small wins. I think it was Chip and Dan Heath who wrote about that.
Okay, yeah, that's a great concept. It really makes you think about those small victories and how important they are. You know, this next part of the book really caught my eye, the strength equation. It talks about aligning your trading with your natural strengths.
Yeah. And they go deep with this idea of character strengths
Yeah.
and using this VIA's test. They encourage you to figure out your top 5 strengths, both in trading Annie and your closest relationships, then see how those lists compare.
I've heard of that test, but what does it focus on exactly?
It looks at strengths that are valued, across different cultures. Things like wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So are you suggesting there's a connection between how we trade and how we deal with relationships in our personal life?
Well, there are definitely some interesting parallels. They actually share a story about this trader whose relationship was really suffering. And a big part of it was that it wasn't tapping into his strengths. This misalignment was creating all this conflict, and it was affecting his trading too.
That's kind of fascinating. Like the same strengths that help you be a successful trader, they might also be the key to happy relationships. What about this idea of well-being fueling performance?
So in that section, they go into this research by Ed Diener on subjective well-being. He talks about these 4 key dimensions: happiness, contentment, energy, and affection.
So it's not just about being happy, right? It's about this like overall sense of well-being.
Yeah, exactly. And they talk about how different people find well-being in different ways. Some people are energized by a fast-paced, high-energy environment. Others find it in those quiet, more introspective activities.
It makes me think about which of those dimensions are really important to me and how I can kind of build them up both in and outside of trading. Then the book goes on to challenge this whole traditional idea of discipline being the key to success.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying discipline isn't fit?
It's
Important?
important for sure. But the thing is, today's markets, they're changing all the time. So you got to be adaptable. You got to be creative. That's becoming more and more crucial to being consistently successful.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Like relying on one indicator all the time. What works in one market might not work in another.
That's a great way to put it. The author uses this analogy of this guy, Jeff. He was a restaurant entrepreneur, and he became really successful by using checklists and feedback systems.
Mhm.
That way he could keep quality consistent across multiple locations.
So it's like he systematized his best practices to get those consistent results,
Right.
but he was still flexible enough to adapt when things changed.
Exactly. They really stress this idea of viewing your trading as a business, right? A business that needs constant adaptation and improvement to really thrive.
This whole idea of continuous improvement, it's really interesting. Speaking of interesting, this book really is full of actionable advice that any trader can use.
Oh, it really is. It covers so much, from market analysis and risk management to self-care, even.
What were some of the, best practices that really stood out to you?
Well, one that comes to mind is using a stock basket to track market breadth and try to spot those potential turning points.
Okay, remind me real quick what a stock basket is.
Basically, it's a group of stocks that you carefully select. They should represent different sectors or themes in the market. And then by looking at how that basket performs, you can get a sense of the market's overall strength or weakness.
So it's like you're not just looking at individual trees, you're looking at the whole forest.
Exactly. And the book talks about how important it is to keep an eye on the volatility and correlation within your stock basket.
Why are those so important?
Well, they could be like early warning signs. Like if you see volatility suddenly spike or the correlation starts breaking down, that could tell you market sentiment is shifting. It might be a sign of a market top or bottom forming.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Like having a radar system for your trading.
Exactly. Another key takeaway is knowing how to analyze all the data out there.
Yeah, it's crazy how much data we have access to these days. It's like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
That's a great way to put it. The book really stresses how important it is to have a clear system for analyzing that market info, whether it's economic data or central bank announcements or even just price action itself.
You don't want to just be mindlessly consuming info. You need to filter it based on your style and your goals.
Yeah. And the author actually shares how he built his own system for tracking something called upticking and downticking volume. It helped him spot those short-term momentum shifts.
Okay, explain upticking and downticking volume.
So basically, it's looking at the number of stocks that are trading at higher prices versus lower prices at any given moment.
So you're looking at the buying and selling pressure underneath, not just the overall price movement.
Exactly. And by putting all that high-frequency data together, he was able to spot trends in the longer-term market.
It's like zooming in to see those tiny details
Yeah.
to understand the bigger picture.
That's a great way to put it. The book also goes into the mental aspects of, managing risk and opportunity.
Those are two sides of the same coin, right?
Absolutely. It highlights how our emotions, they can really distort how we see both risk and opportunity.
Yeah, fear can make you miss out on a great trade, and then greed can make you take on way too much risk.
Exactly. The book really stresses how important it is to have a clear plan for managing both. There's even this exercise where you imagine the market immediately goes your way, you hit your target. Would you be happy with the gains, or would you feel like you left money on the table?
Whoa, that's a good question. It makes you think about whether you're really pushing yourself enough.
Right. And then another key best practice is regular trading reviews.
That makes sense. It's like how athletes watch game film to figure out what they need to work on.
Exactly. It's all about learning from every trade, both the good and the bad. Figuring out what worked, what didn't, and how you can improve your process.
So you're not dwelling on past mistakes. You're taking those lessons and moving forward.
Right. They talk about tracking things like win rate, average win size, average loss size, all those key metrics.
So you're taking a data-driven approach to your trading.
Yeah. And they even talk about tracking personal metrics too, like how well are you sleeping, what's your mood been like, how's your energy level, all that can affect your trading.
That's so interesting. It really shows how everything is connected, your physical, mental, and emotional state. It all plays a role. Speaking of, what about taking care of our mental and emotional well-being?
Oh, that's so crucial in trading. It can be super stressful, right? The book talks about having a life outside of trading, spending time with friends and family, pursuing your hobbies, whatever brings you joy.
You got to fill your own cup before you can pour for others. You need that energy and resilience to succeed.
Exactly. And they also talk about gratitude.
I love that. It's so easy to get caught up in all the negativity, especially when things aren't going your way.
They actually suggest keeping a gratitude journal and writing down 3 things you're grateful for every day.
That sounds like a great way to shift your focus.
It really is. And of course, they talk about exercise too.
Oh, I can totally agree on the benefits of exercise, both for your body and your mind.
It's all about finding something you enjoy and making it part of your routine. But they also talk about mental exercise.
What's that?
Things that challenge your mind, like reading, learning a new skill, playing brain games, that kind of thing.
It's a workout for your brain.
Exactly. The idea is, if you're not learning and growing, you're falling behind. Now, what about self-awareness? Do you think that's important when it comes to trading?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't know yourself, how can you improve, right?
That's exactly the point they make.
Yeah.
They talk about paying attention to your self-talk. That little voice in your head, sometimes it can be your worst critic.
Oh, yeah, that negative self-talk can be so damaging.
They suggest something called cognitive journaling. It helps you identify and challenge those thoughts that aren't helpful.
It's like you become a therapist for your own mind.
That's a great way to put it. The book also talks about learning to manage how your body reacts to stress.
Oh, yeah, I can relate to that. Like that fight or flight response when you're facing a big loss or the market's just going crazy.
Exactly. They recommend biofeedback techniques to train yourself to stay calm under pressure.
That's so cool. It's like you're hacking your own nervous system. And speaking of hacking, what about finding a trading style that actually fits your personality and your strengths?
That's another big part of the book.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes knowing yourself, your cognitive style, how much risk you're comfortable with, what your emotional triggers are, all of that.
Yeah, if you're trying to force yourself into a trading style that doesn't fit you, it's just not going to work.
Exactly. The
Mhm.
book talks about all these different trader personalities.
Mhm.
You've got analytical traders, intuitive traders, action-oriented traders. It shows there's no one right way to trade.
It's really about finding what works for you. What about having a solid trading routine?
Oh, that's definitely emphasized in the book. Consistency is key, and they recommend building a daily ritual that helps you get in the right mindset.
Like setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. That can mean reviewing your plan, meditating, visualizing your goals, whatever works for you.
It's like your own personal power hour. And what about creating a supportive environment for yourself, for your trading?
Yeah, that's another key point. Trading can get lonely, and that can really hurt you. They talk about connecting with other traders, building a community, whether it's online or in person.
Like having your own trading support group.
Exactly. And they also talk about finding a mentor or coach, someone who can give you guidance and feedback.
Sometimes you need that outside perspective, someone with experience to help you stay on track.
Absolutely. But they do stress that you got to choose your mentor carefully.
Yeah, you don't want to end up following someone down the wrong path.
The ideal mentor is someone who's not just successful, but also shares your values and gets your trading style.
Like finding your trading soulmate. So we've talked about finding a mentor and building a routine, but what about continuous learning and development? How important is that in your view?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. The market's always changing, so if you're not constantly learning and adapting, you're falling behind.
Yeah, it's like you got to feed your trading mind, stay up on those market trends, keep reading, attending conferences, all of that.
Exactly. And it's not just passively taking in information. They also talk about experimenting, trying new things.
That's so important because you never know what's going to work for you until you try it.
Right. And they recommend keeping a trading journal so you can track your ideas and experiments and see what kind of results you get.
Like turning your trading into a science experiment.
I love that analogy. And then there's self-belief, which is so crucial.
Oh, yeah. Self-belief is everything. If you don't believe in yourself, who will?
They really drive that point home.
Yeah.
And they emphasize that it's not something you're just born with. It's something you build over time. It comes from experience, hard work, and not giving up.
It's like a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it.
Exactly. They talk about setting goals you can actually achieve, celebrating your successes, learning from those failures.
It's all about turning those setbacks into opportunities for growth.
What do you think about having a really clear trading plan?
Oh, that's a must-have.
Yeah.
If you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there, right?
Exactly. They recommend having a written plan that spells everything out, your goals, your risk management strategy, your entry and exit points, everything.
It's like a roadmap for your trading journey.
Love that analogy. But just having a plan isn't enough. They really emphasize the importance of sticking to it, even when things get rough.
That takes discipline. That's what separates the pros from the amateurs.
For sure. The book talks about having a set of rules for your trading, rules that you follow no matter what.
Like a set of guardrails to keep you on track. Speaking of keeping yourself in check, what about managing your emotions?
That's got to be one of the toughest parts of trading.
Yeah.
If you let your emotions take over, that's a recipe for disaster.
So what are some of the best ways to, master your emotions when it comes to trading?
The book talks a lot about self-awareness, knowing what your triggers are, what your strengths and weaknesses are.
Like they say, knowing yourself is the first step to controlling yourself.
Right. And they also recommend having some coping mechanisms in place for when the stress hits.
Things like taking a break, going for a walk, putting on some music, whatever helps you relax and refocus.
Exactly. But it's not just about managing those negative emotions. They also talk about building up those positive feelings, like gratitude, joy, enthusiasm.
Yeah, those positive emotions are powerful. They can really boost your motivation and make the whole trading journey a lot more enjoyable. What about developing a growth mindset?
Oh, that's huge, especially in trading. You got to be willing to adapt, be open to new ideas, and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, the market's always changing, so you gotta change with it.
They really emphasize focusing on the process of getting better, not just on the outcome of each individual trade.
It's about accepting that you're gonna make mistakes. That's how you learn and grow.
That's a great point. What are your thoughts on finding your edge as a trader?
I think finding your edge is absolutely essential. It's what sets you apart, gives you an advantage in the market.
Exactly. They encourage you to experiment, try different things, find what works for you, whether it's a certain trading style or a specific market niche or your unique skills or some combination.
It's like finding your superpower.
What about risk management?
Oh, risk management is fundamental. If you don't manage risk well, you're not going to last long enough to achieve anything in trading.
Totally agree. The book really stresses that it's not just about cutting losses. It's about having a plan, knowing your limits, and sticking to your rules.
Like having a safety net to protect you from those big wipeouts.
What about the importance of a winning mindset?
Oh, having a winning mindset is essential for anything you want to achieve, but especially in trading. It's about believing in yourself, having that positive self-talk, and never giving up on your goals.
They really highlight that a winning mindset isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through hard work and perseverance. And learning from your mistakes, of course.
It's like training your mind for success. What about a strong trading routine?
The book really stresses consistency and suggests creating a daily routine that helps you get prepped for the trading day.
Like setting the stage for a great performance.
Exactly. Whether it's going over your plan, meditating, visualizing your goals, even something physical to clear your head.
It's like that personal power hour again.
What are your thoughts on creating that supportive trading environment we were talking about before?
It's so important. Trading can be isolating, so having that community of like-minded people,
Yeah.
that can make all the difference.
Yeah.
For support, encouragement, accountability.
Absolutely. They talk about joining a trading community, online or in person, a place to connect, share ideas, learn from each other.
It's like having your own cheerleading squad.
That's a great way to put it. They also talk about finding a mentor, someone to provide guidance and feedback.
Yeah, having a mentor can be so valuable, especially when you're just starting out or when you're going through a rough patch.
Definitely. But they emphasize that you got to be careful who you choose.
Right. You don't want to end up taking advice from the wrong person.
The ideal mentor is someone who is successful, shares your values, and understands your trading style.
It's like finding a trading soulmate.
I love that analogy. What are your thoughts on continuous learning and development in trading?
I think it's essential. The markets are constantly evolving, so you got to evolve with them.
Totally agree. The book recommends staying current on market trends, reading, attending conferences, taking courses.
It really is all about keeping up with the market's changes and constantly learning new things. And speaking of adapting, the book talks a lot about understanding market cycles.
Yeah, and not just looking at them like as these fixed, predictable patterns.
Right, because people try to force the market into these neat little boxes, then they get surprised when it doesn't behave the way they expect.
Exactly. The book emphasizes how those cycles are dynamic. They're always evolving, always changing based on new information.
So it's kind of like the market is this living, breathing thing, always reacting and changing.
I like that. That's a great way to think about it. The author actually shares how he looks for cycles. He tracks all kinds of breadth indicators and watches how different sectors behave.
So it's about looking for those little clues that can give you a hint of what's to come.
Exactly. But it's not just about finding the cycles, right? It's about knowing how to trade them effectively.
And that leads into this whole idea of event time versus chronological time.
Yeah. That's a really important concept. So instead of just looking at a price chart on a regular timeline, you're focusing on those big market events like news releases, earnings reports, even technical breakouts.
So it's more about reacting to what's happening right now in market instead of just watching the clock.
Right. That shift in perspective is key. The book argues that this event-driven approach can really help you stay ahead of the curve, find those opportunities that others miss.
Makes sense because the market doesn't move for no reason. It's driven by events that have this ripple effect.
Exactly. And this brings us to another key point, knowing when to just step back and not trade.
Because sometimes the best thing to do is nothing at all.
Absolutely. They talk about FOMO a lot, that fear of missing out. It can lead to some bad decisions, some costly mistakes.
Yeah, it's like you see everyone else making money and you feel like you have to jump in even if it doesn't fit your plan. You end up chasing and just getting burned.
Exactly.
Hmm?
The book talks about having clear rules for when to sit on the sidelines. Maybe the market's too volatile, there's not enough liquidity, or maybe even you're just not in the right mental state.
So it's like a pre-trade checklist, right? To help you avoid those emotional decisions.
That's a great way to put it. It's just as important to know when to trade as it is to know what to trade.
I'm really loving all this insight. One thing I'm curious about, though, how do you manage your energy, both mental and emotional, while you're doing all of this?
That's a great question. The book really emphasizes having a routine that helps you recharge both inside and outside of trading.
So it's like you've got your trading strategy and then you've got your energy strategy.
Exactly. It's about making sure you're getting enough sleep, eating healthy food, exercising, spending time with people you care about, all of that.
Reminds me of how athletes train, right? You can't perform at your best if you're neglecting your well-being.
That's a great analogy. They're really emphasizing that you have to pay attention to all areas of your life if you want to perform at your peak in trading.
Now, the book also talks about using analogies to help understand trading better. I found that really interesting.
Yeah, analogies can be so powerful. They can help you see things in a whole new way.
Like when you're stuck on a problem and then some random analogy from a totally different field just clicks and helps you figure it out.
Exactly. The author talks about how his experience as a college counselor, believe it or not, gave him some insights into the world of electronic market makers.
That's wild. It really shows how you can find inspiration in the most unexpected places.
It's all about staying curious, being open to new ideas, always looking for those different perspectives. And, that kind of ties into the importance of collaboration, which the book also talks about.
So it's not always about being a lone wolf, huh?
Right. Working with others can really broaden your perspective. You get new ideas, you hold each other accountable.
It's the whole two heads are better than one thing.
Exactly. They use this great analogy of a successful trading team being like a jazz band. Everyone brings their own unique skills, and they kind of riff off each other.
I love that. Like the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. And it's not just about collaborating with other traders. It's also about building those strong relationships with mentors, coaches, even family and friends,
Yeah.
people who can support you and help you along the way.
It's like you're creating this whole trading ecosystem, surrounding yourself with people who understand your goals.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Mm.
And of course, we can't forget about creativity. It's so important for trading success.
Especially now when everyone has access to the same information, it's that ability to think differently that really gives you an edge.
Absolutely. The book really pushes you to develop those creative thinking skills, whether it's brainstorming or mind mapping, or even just going for a walk in nature.
It's about getting out of your routine, letting your mind wander, and exploring new possibilities.
Exactly. And not being afraid to experiment, to try new things, even if you fail along the way.
Because failure is just a lesson learned, right?
That's that growth mindset, essential for any trader who wants to be successful in the long run.
It seems like grit is another big factor in trading success. What does the book have to say about that?
Oh, they really go into grit. It's that ability to persevere, to stick with your goals even when things get tough.
So it's not just about being smart or talented, it's about that dedication that really separates the successful traders from everyone else.
Exactly. And they give some practical tips for building grit. Things like setting realistic goals, breaking big goals down into smaller chunks, celebrating your progress, having that support system in place.
It's like laying those bricks one by one to build a solid foundation.
I like that. But it's also important to remember, grit isn't just about pushing yourself all the time.
Right, you got to know when to rest and take care of yourself too.
Yeah. Finding that balance between working hard and taking care of yourself. It's something we talked about earlier.
It all ties together, doesn't it? It seems like this book is about so much more than just trading. It's about personal growth and creating a life that you're really excited about.
You nailed it. It's about self-discovery and becoming the best version of yourself in trading A&D in life.
This has been such an amazing journey through Trading Psychology 2.0. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. So for everyone listening out there, remember, in today's markets, creativity is the new discipline. Embrace those changes, use your strengths, and never stop learning and growing. Because the key, success. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Trading Psychology 2.0 as much as we did. It's been a pleasure exploring these concepts with you, and we hope you join us next time for another fascinating deep dive. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep trading smart.